This week on the AVB Podcast, we are here at the lovely Walkerville Tavern, sitting with local illustrator, artist, and super good guy, from what I understand, Mr. George Rizok. George, how's it going, man?
Very good, very good.
Awesome. Thank you for inviting us here, and thank you for sitting down with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I am lucky enough to work for a wonderful woman named Kara that is always very generous with her time. And it's where I work, so it's convenient for me.
That's awesome. Happy New Year to everybody, this being the first episode of the new year. The reason we ended up sitting down for this one, we got together with Tamara, who we will introduce you guys to next week. And she's got an event happening down at the Glengarry Community Initiative.
Yep.
And this and that interview are kind of part of a promotion for that event coming up on February 1st. So if you're seeing this before that, please come on down to that event. All of the artsy-fartsy promo stuff aside, I guess we can get on with the show now. George, tell me, I've heard quite a bit about you as an artist, but I'll start with you the same way that we start with all of our guests. I want to know about the house that you grew up in. We started talking a little bit about your dad before we started recording, but...
Yeah, actually, it's as far as it pertains to art specifically, I had this discussion with a friend of mine just yesterday in an hour-and-a-half line at the Ukrainian church for delicious pierogies. Oh, that lineup, and there was a beautiful man playing his accordion. It was a wonderful experience.
Nice.
The lineups are great. But I met an old high school friend, and my son now is a brilliant illustrator.
How old is he?
17. And it is at Walkerville High, and is doing a great job. Wants to go in this university for it as well. And I love drawing, and growing up, there was no one in my home that did any illustration or artwork of any kind.
Talk to me about the house as it was then. It doesn't have to be...
It was very wonderful as far as 80s middle class. Wonderful. My father worked his butt off 14, 15 hours a day.
Right.
You know, that kind of Ford's life.
Factory
where
worker,
that when it was his vacation time, it was time to chop the wood, dig a hole, pour a foundation, work your butt off. And from that, and including my mother, just keeping a great household and so supportive. I learned a work ethic that involved if I didn't put
work?
Yeah, if I didn't, my father was a drill sergeant in the Army, so if I didn't do the garbage, let's say, now mind you, I'm not this kind of father, but times change. I would get woken up at whatever time it was, 5:30 in the morning, when the garbage truck was at our house, and then I would get "Get up, boy, it's time to go!" And then we'd be in my underwear, rushing out front, rain, snow, doesn't matter, dragging that garbage out.
Right.
My dad going, "Let him put it in, let him put it in," and I'd put the garbage in the thing. It was absolutely great. I look back at that as it being a wonderful childhood and a great home. Now, again, going back to the art thing, when I applied for school in Toronto, I had all my artwork out on the kitchen table because I needed a big surface to get my portfolio together and go and try to impress some strangers. And I remember distinctively my wonderful mother coming up and looking at everything and going, "These are really nice. Who did these?" Not to say that she didn't know I didn't draw, and not to say she wasn't supportive, just it was one of those, she was like, "Oh." And having that experience now with Owen, my son, and just looking at all that beautiful artwork, and I'm almost at the time I was like, how dare she not know what I was up to 24 hours a day? And now I'm in the same boat where I'm like, who drew that?
Right.
Because it just happens so fast, and even without any art in my home necessarily, I was given the freedom to explore it, and I spent a lot of time following Bob Monks.
Okay.
When I was a little guy, he did so much.
There's a name I haven't heard in a while, and he was so important to even me as a kid. He'd coming up on CBC News when he was doing all those local reports and that kind of thing.
Not only that, he would be at the art gallery or the community center, and he would do. I think I paid for some of the classes, but some of them he just would go down there and do an hour of portraits and. He started everyone out, and I still do this now, when I start with especially younger kids, and I stole it right from him. He would put on Vivaldi or whatever, Beethoven, and he would just have you close your eyes and scribble, and then turn the music off, and then have you make something out of that scribble. It's a very basic sort of, art exercise to loosen up the room, right? But yeah, he was great. Just having that.
How did you get introduced to that world at all? Like because you said in the house that you grew up in, there wasn't really art around you.
It was the scientific method of trial and error.
Okay.
So it started with hockey, then baseball, then soccer, and then back to hockey, and then eventually football. And then they started leaning towards, well, let's try them on the guitar or the piano. And that didn't work out. And then it finally led to a local woman around here, Julia Conlon, and she offered an art class. And that's how I got introduced to it, by my parents just going like, I struggled a lot in school. So I was, dyslexic. It was the late 70s. No one knew what to do with a kid like me. And if you look at the history of it in our school system, they were literally experimenting on how are we going to help these kids.
And you were part of that experimentation.
And I was part of that experimentation. Not that I was, poked and prodded with lasers and such, but art wasn't really a part of that until, into high school, and then finding Julia and having her, really say things to me like, you don't draw Garfield, right? Because that's how I started. Until I met anyone that was in the art world, it was just Garfield and Odie and just drawing them all day long. Just redrawing stuff that Jim had drawn. And I never explored anything like that until I met other artists, again, like Bob, like stuff like that. And
How'd you first get exposed to Bob?
Bob was same as you were saying. It was right on the TV.
Oh yeah.
Just a charming guy. By the time before he unfortunately passed away, he had a studio downtown, and I had at this point, traveled the world a little bit and come back to Windsor to beg for a job at a place called Slice's Pizza, and he was right around the corner. He had a little studio downtown, and he, he was the same guy that I saw on TV. And when I saw him just, on TV whip out a piece of paper and draw, and it wasn't, like a lesson where it was dry, it was boring, and it was that sort of stuff. It was very much like have fun and just doodle away. And at that point, again, until I saw that, I didn't think to draw Darth Vader, right? Like, and draw my own version of a character and like set things up and start to create my own worlds. And then illustration just became, unlike being in a band, one of the great things, and the reason why I like just doing it with other people, is it's a very independent thing to do. So I can just pick up paper, pencil, and just draw away, and then no one tells me what to do.
I'm sort of interested because you kind of walked through this path a little bit. You explored sports, and then you started exploring music. And I know you're also a musician, right?
No, actually I tried, and a lot of people will ask me that only because I've spent so much time with musicians. I admire them so much, and I've done everything in my power to be involved in their world. I tried harmonica, tambourines, everything.
Right.
I even had the mouth harp going once, and a buddy of mine let me go on stage and play 2 twangs, and it was the greatest day of my life. So
should we just say hi to Phil now? Because there's only one other person in the city that has a mouth harp. Hi, Phil.
Well, so when I did through sports and music, it wasn't torture, but it wasn't clicking.
Wasn't your thing?
Yeah, it wasn't clicking at all.
At some point you understand that you are not going to take fucking around in the streets into a career.
Yeah, exactly, and it was, I just want to tell this story real quick because my father tells it. I remember it, but not the way he does. And it was hockey, and it was the second time around on hockey, and the whistle blew, and I just remember hearing my father in the stands just holler out, like, Jesus Christ, like, boy! And just you could hear that boom in his voice, because I had dropped my Yoda action figure out of my hockey pants, and I had stopped everyone on the ice, dropped my stick, and was down looking for it. And it was just, that was the moment where my father was like, all right, okay, let's find something else.
Clearly not interested.
Yeah, clearly in no way into this. And that was the year that I did well, because it had finally been shown to me that I grew to 6 feet pretty young, and that if I just don't worry about the puck,
right,
and just worry about hitting guys,
you'd be okay.
And I was a superstar at this point,
right,
because all I knew was like, number 6, and be like, and that was my job, right? I loved it.
Were you that kid though? Like, was that a way for you to take out the aggravation?
It was wonderful. That's what really got me enjoying it. But again, there was no, and it was the same in football. We had an Ironman team, which is like, we only had 1.5 lines, right?
Yeah.
So we'd play both positions. And I knew that if I got a tug on my jersey, I wasn't allowed to use my hands. That's all I knew about the entire game. I knew nothing else about how to run or who had the ball or anything like that. That's all I knew. And then if I got the tug, I couldn't use my hands, and I had to keep them in. Otherwise, I could use my hands and I could take on, and I would go for the biggest guy every time, and I'd get run over like I was not good at it, but I enjoyed that part of it. I enjoyed barreling down in the armor like a knight of the round table, or like Batman. Like,
I was the opposite. I think I don't remember this, but my parents tell a story of being like 3 years old, and they put me into like skating lessons, because my dad was like, he wanted me to be like the hockey player kid, right?
Sure.
Sports kid, because my dad was all of that stuff. But I got pneumonia like right after that, and I guess in my 3-year-old brain, I connected them, and after that moment was like, no, I'm not going back there. And like my entire life after that, anytime I tried to get anywhere near sports, something, just like football, I went and tried out. As soon as it got to hitting, it was like, no, I'm not. No, I've got no interest in this shit.
Well, see, that's what was great for me, was the hitting was fun, but my father loved going to the games, and he ended up coaching, especially with my younger brother and stuff, and it was, it was wonderful times with Dad, and it was fun, and he was encouraging, and it was really great. I never had that like fear of it as much as I just could care less about the rules and the score.
Yeah.
None of that interests me in any way. When people would get pumped up like we won, I'd be like, great.
You didn't identify with the team mentality.
Yeah, I didn't. It was another fun thing to do outside.
Right.
It had nothing to do with me against anyone else.
Right.
I would constantly.
That's interesting. That's like, honestly, until sitting down right now with that take, I hadn't really sort of made that connection. But I think a lot of artists, and I mean, it's a cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. Obviously, there's a lot of examples where that fall out of this, but like, you either tend to be sports or artist.
Yeah, it's a line that's unfortunately drawn, right? Like it shouldn't be, right? Like, growing up with my brother, he was the sports guy and I was the art guy. Mm-hmm. So I read comic books, he collected baseball cards.
Right.
But beyond that, at late at night, I picked up all the knowledge so I could go to school the next day, and we would play this game where you throw your hockey cards against the wall, and I would get a Mary Lemieux rookie, and I would get my brother a Gretzky for that year, and I would help him, and he would subsequently read Dr. Fate and Green Lantern, and then, because we shared a room, so this, we were both, to this day, I remember all these things and think of them very fondly.
What does your brother do now for a living?
He is a government man. And he plays on 4 different hockey teams to this day.
That's the point. That's exactly the point I was trying to make. I think the difference between the two, and again, there's crossover obviously, but I think the difference between the two is how quickly and immediately you identify with the team mentality.
Yeah, and even more so, he's a goalie, which is really descriptive of him. Yeah, he's alone on a team.
Right.
And he is great at it.
Yeah.
He is really good at it. And you know what I mean? He likes his work a lot. He's moved up quickly over the last few years. And even when he was a little guy, you know what I mean? He was mowing all the lawns and putting all the lines on the field. You know what I mean? He got involved past just, throwing the bat on the ground, having someone else pick it up, and like, he was fully involved through the whole thing.
Older or younger brother?
Younger brother.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you started, you said you started traveling before you really got involved with art?
I was already involved in art in the sense that I knew that's what I was going to do.
Okay.
I knew that at that point I had already applied for an art school, and then that's when I did the backpacker on Europe, and then moved to Toronto.
Tell me about the backpacker around Europe thing. I know it's like artists think it's fucking cliche, but to be honest with you, like those stories are always amazing to me. Like how did you even come to the point where it was all right? I'm going off to do this.
I did the what are you rebelling against? What do you got thing, right? Again, a loving home with wonderful people who wanted nothing but the best for me, but I was like, I'm out of here.
Right.
So they, were like, how much money do you have? I'm like, $400. They're like, take this, like, completely supportive and all that stuff. And I got there, and I believe the second Tim Burton Batman movie was out, and I had to see it. So with what little money I had, I think I was in England at the time, and I went and saw it, and they had beer in the theater, and you could smoke cigarettes in the theater, and I made a day of it.
Right.
And then I was 18, so maybe 19, and I found cider, and I woke up in the park because I was an idiot and didn't know what drinking was, and found this Kool-Aid stuff that was delicious that had 14% or something. So I had woken up with no shoes, my money belt was gone, and there I was within my first couple of days, and I knew that I had to, because of the movie Highlander, go see Stonehenge. That was the main reason why I went, because of Highlander.
All right.
So I hitchhiked to Stonehenge, which I believed was in Scotland, because I also didn't bother looking it up.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So I'm in this.
When you rolled up to it on the highway, how was that?
Well, I hitchhiked and I was pointed towards Scotland, and the first person that picked me up, because hitchhiking at that time, I don't know what it's like now, was very simple.
Right.
And you know what I mean? The British Isles kind of fit in the Great Lakes, so it's a small area. So I get this ride into Scotland, and the guy's bringing me into Edinburgh. And
so you didn't fucking say to him,
no,
you just take me to Scotland.
Take me to Scotland. And then when we got to Edinburgh, I was like, which way is Stonehenge? And he's like, back that way, moron. So I, at that point, was like, well, now I'm screwed. I'm wearing shoes I found on the streets. I have like a chocolate bar and nothing else. And again, I still have months left there. So I just wandered out. I was like, oh, I'm going to go again, Highlander, the movie. So I'm going to go to the Highlands, and I literally just walked down a country road where I found a kid who broke his bike, and then I got him back to his farmhouse, and they rented a little bungalow on their 15th century farm property, and I ended up working for them for the entire summer. I didn't see any other parts of Europe. I lived on a Scottish farm. I helped raise goats. I built stone walls. Mr. Pennington, the guy, wonderful man. He looked like Santa Claus meets a linebacker. The guy was special forces, deep sea diver, very, very strict man, would get me up every day, kicking the door open. You know, your problem is, Rizok, you're a lazy pig. And I was killing it every day. Like every day was up before him, digging holes, doing that. Was never enough until, the day I left, and he was like, good job. And it was, oh my God. So, you know what I mean? It was, my experience was working my butt off on a farm, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I didn't see Paris, and I didn't go here, and I didn't go there. I mean, I did.
Did you ever see fucking Stonehenge?
I did.
Okay.
On my last week there, the Penningtons, who basically paid me in food and lodging.
Right.
And they ran a little hostel in this little farmhouse, and I ran the hostel. So I had people from Australia coming every day, and people from Canada, and people from all over the world. So I had a great experience meeting people, and then through that, and other fellow travelers, they were like, you're like 6 hours away from Stonehenge.
Right.
You could be there and back in the same day, basically. So I eventually, made my way to Mr. Pennington. Every week would give me like a fish or a chicken and a pack of tobacco and a bottle of whiskey, and that was my weekend, right?
Right.
That was my Sunday, because I had Sundays we didn't work. The first Sunday I got up and started digging, he came out, pushed me into the hole I was digging, told me, we don't work on Sundays, you heathen, now get back in there. And so it was great. And I ended up just hitchhiking there and coming back in the same day, and I saw some rocks and bought a t-shirt, and that was it.
That's funny. Do you still communicate with them?
The last time we had any communication, unfortunately, Mr. Pennington is no longer with us, but the family that's there, there's a Christmas card every now and again, but my father actually took my younger brother to Scotland on travel hockey. Well, my brother was about the same age I was at that time, so late high school. And he went and saw them.
Oh, that's cool.
And he went to, because it was in the East Nuke of Fife. And it was just this tiny little town, a 1.5 mile walk into town. There was a pub, a grocery store, and a post office, and that was it.
Right.
A bunch of fishermen. And so there's only the one pub. So that's where I went when I could. When I had $3, I'd go have a pint there. I'd walk the 1.5 miles and walk back. And he went into the pub and sat down and said, "Hi, my name is George Rizok," which is my name, which is his name. And they were like, "No, you're not. George Rizok's a little skinny kid who always pukes in that corner over there." And my dad just laughed and bought a round. And I mean, he hasn't drank in 40 plus years, but he had a great time and hung out with everybody. They went and saw him at the farm, and they were all doing well and had a good laugh about.
How long were you there for?
I think just under 3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was there for a good stretch.
When you came home, were you different?
I would. Yeah, I had. I was definitely less interested. I only lasted about a year in college.
Okay.
Sitting in a class.
Oh yeah, because that was pre.
That was pre art school.
Okay.
So I only lasted the first year in art school because it was where I lived in Toronto was right by the art school, and every single artist, be young, poor, old, professor, rich, all had studios.
Okay.
So once I sat in a classroom that was reteaching me the color theory that I already knew, and when I stepped into a studio where I'd never seen a studio before.
Okay.
So I was now, because of traveling, not only just open to all of this, but I was in my mind thinking to myself, I just learned more in 3 hours of hanging out in this guy's studio washing his brushes and him showing me how to wash brushes properly and hang them properly, as opposed to jamming them in a jar and letting them bend. And then I did with $3,000 that I just dropped for a half a semester of this dry education, which now a lot of people have gone there and a lot of people learn in a different way. And I'm not suggesting that this is a bad thing, especially because I have a son that will have to go to school. But I think I just was, sleeping on a couch, sleeping in a bathtub, staying up all night to, learn how to properly mix primary colors. That was all something I could do now. And the creature comforts of my upbringing, wonderful, the warm food every day, a soft bed, all that went away from the traveling. Right?
It's really interesting to me that you bring it up that way, because I think one of the tough ideas that I've had to come to grips with the idea of being an artist is that you hear the romantic story of the artist, right? Like the making it on your own, sort of like pinching your pennies where you can, sort of like that whole thing. But we come from an era and an area of a lot of fucking privilege. A lot of privilege.
I tell people every day, you were incredible. I don't have any money for smokes. Or, I have a friend of mine who's about to have a baby who's a little young and they're very worried about it. I'm like, listen, you're never going to be rich in the way where you'll never have to work. But you live in one of the richest parts of the world. You literally could go into that dumpster and eat for a week. Like, come on, it's all there. Yeah. Like, it's absolutely, it's again about comfort. What are you willing to afford? What do you need? If what you need is a canvas and paintbrushes or paper and pencil or strings and a piece of wood and some love and family. So, be a good person, be honest. And sometimes you eat ramen noodle. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
It's not a matter of struggling to go find clean water. Like, that's not our problem.
Like, you said you grew up in a house where dad was a drill sergeant, and then you went off on your own to sort of find that I don't know, the discomfort, I guess, because you kind of keep...
Sure. Yeah, and Dad was a drill sergeant.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally get that. But what I mean is, like, did you have any perspective that might have been what you needed at the time, or were you just like... Like, did you have any of that? I'm gonna do it on my, you know what I mean?
I certainly had the I'm gonna do it on my own, but I'd gone camping and didn't exactly love it. Okay. You know what I mean? So in that sense, I had the Mom's still gonna bring me a box of socks.
Right.
I'm still gonna have deodorants just in the bathroom, right? Like I still had that mentality. I wasn't looking to. I didn't realize what it would mean to have to not just work all the time, especially in Toronto, right, where rent is, for a 20-year-old kid who's working at a movie theater trying to paint all night and start or draw comic books and break into the industry and work on his portfolio constantly, and I didn't realize that rough life I could lose my apartment, which I did, and then I lived on people's couches. So I was working every day, living on a buddy's couch, doing his laundry, cooking his dinners to make sure they didn't kick me out because I, knew what it was to be a good guest, not be seen, and then all that, and then realize that, you just don't, I haven't worn underwear since 91 because I just don't have when I started cutting the budget, right, underwear and socks at the age of 20 and deodorant and all those things just went out the window right away, and then they just never made their way back into the budget. You know what I mean? Like other things did. Like now I buy expensive cheese. Right. You know what I'm saying? So no, I wasn't looking for that. I didn't know I needed that in any way, shape, or form. It was not pleasant.
Did you have that why the fuck am I doing this?
That I think comes to all of us at some point, but definitely later. I think there's always that, you know what I mean? I'm in my later 40s, so there's always that I should have taken that factory job. Right. You know what I mean? I should have lived in my parents' basement for a little bit longer and just to eating that free food, and I would be so much further along in what, really? Right. You know what I mean? So that goes away pretty quickly, but yeah, I don't think I once I got into it, you know what I mean? Once I met all the other artists, once I went to a couple of shows, once I realized that with a couple of 2x4s and some milk crates, I can make my own couch, I reveled in it, and I absolutely loved it. Now I have a great house and a beautiful lady and two wonderful kids and a very supportive family, but all of that came because of that support network and because of those people. If I had just tried to do it on my own, I'd still be on that milk crate couch right now. Right. You know what I mean? So, but there's a perspective on it now that, I needed that to now be able to draw for money. Right. You know what I mean? To treat it like work. Right. To bring that discipline that I could do in a kitchen or a paying job, and then bring it into the creative process. Because I've now seen how the two can meet. Because when you're doing the artsy fartsy thing and you're like, well, I don't take money for it, or I don't sell out, or any of those things, you feel like it's all inspiration. So unless I'm, I got to be in the right mood. I'm gonna need my ashtray here, and I'm gonna need this radio station on, and the sun's got to be just right, and that stuff is still all there. And it's still beautiful and it's wonderful, and those little magical moments are great. But now I can
get the fucking work.
Yeah, I can draw your dog.
Right.
And I can put it in a frame I made myself, and you can give it to your wife, and it's going to be a great goddamn picture of that dog. Right. It's going to be my style, and it's going to be beautiful, and I'm going to make, a couple of bucks, and then I'm going to go and, get the newest Luke Skywalker action figure, and I'm going to be the happiest guy in the world.
Drop it on the fucking ice.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Do you instill any of that side? Because you said you've got a son now who draws.
Yes.
Do you talk to him about that part of it? Is it even worth talking about that part of it?
I've tried to, you know what I mean? I work a real job, and then I do artwork not just as a hobby, but as a compulsion and a desire and a love, and I do like to make the money from time to time, especially around Christmas time or whatnot. There's a lot of commissions for gifts and things like that, and just having people like my work was enough. And now that I'm charging for it, and that comes from my older sister being, you know, so supportive and being the one to be like, you got to stop giving this stuff away for free. And so I'm not the one to pass that knowledge off, but I've been bringing my son with me whenever I can to things I volunteer and do and things I get paid to do. So I'm trying to, I guess in that sense, sort of show what daddy does. And you know, I've done comic conventions where kids line up and I draw them their favorite superhero.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter that I'm not Todd McFarlane or Mark Silvestri or any of these great, or Dave Finch or any of these artists. They're just happy to see drawings be done.
Right.
And, you know, I've volunteered and done this for Free Comic Book Day, you know, and then I've been paid by people to do the exact same thing and paid very nicely.
Yeah.
So, you know.
It's a different feeling, right?
It is a different feeling. And I guess in that sense, I'm hoping that, you know, he picks up on it. I mean, what I want for this young man's life and what this young man will make for his life is certainly, you know, I guess, you know, who am I to be like, you better ask for this much money at this point to do this, or no, just do it for love. You know,
see, I don't. Yeah, see, I wasn't
just
even
show him,
that.
right?
I think that's nonsense. I see some of the. It's funny because, you know, we live in the day and age of the internet, and we're surrounded by, or at least I'm surrounded by, struggling artists, right?
Absolutely.
So that kind of conversation comes up all the time. And every time I see somebody take like the hardline stance of like, you know, fuck exposure dollars, I'm like, I get what you're saying, but you're missing a giant piece of it if you're just pulling a line of no, I will not do anything. You know what I mean? Like there's times and there's things when it's appropriate. There's times and things when it's not. Like it's.
Yeah, you need to. Someone was talking about this on the radio yesterday, but you need to go. You can't just try to pitch your artwork to Marvel. Right. And you can't just do it for yourself. There's a network of people around you that will support you, and the community around you that are maybe not artists, but maybe musicians, but maybe, you know, that 17-year-old kid that I worked with one day at the library in comic book club could be the editor of a magazine one day when I'm 60 and still doodling away and be like, you know what, man, I need you to do an illustration for this. You know what I mean? Like, you never know when that network's going to work out.
It's amazing how they work out sometimes.
And at that same time, there's nothing wrong with drawing a picture of Santa Claus for your friend's sister to give to their brother's mother. And take the $50 or take the $200 or, you know, and have an answer to the question, how much if I want you to do a drawing for me.
So tough, eh?
Right? It's just
how long did it take you to figure that out? And I mean, when do you suppose you'll get there?
I don't think I'll ever get there, but I was lucky to collaborate on art shows with a gentleman that I now work for, or I work for his department, I guess, at the art gallery, a guy named Stephen Nielsen, an incredible artist. And he and I would do art shows when we were in our 20s, and I would take gin and tonic for my painting, and he'd be charging a real artist's amount, factoring in the hours, factoring in the supplies, paying himself minimum wage at the bare minimum. So $150 was a fair price to ask for a piece from a guy who's in his 20s that's brilliant and detailed and took X amount of time. And I was just like, the universe will take care of it. And through him and I, because he was frustrated, right? Well, this guy's giving them away. We're doing a show together. Why the hell are they going to want to pay for mine? But then we started working together, and he started explaining this to me. And then it got to the point now where I can answer that question with a way of it pushing people away. Like, how much to draw a picture of this? And I'm like, well, for black and white pencil, it's this amount. For this. And the number gets so high so fast that people are like, oh, I can't afford that. And I'm like, I know. And I don't have the time unless you pay me this. I have my family. I've got a dog I want to walk. I gotta wash this shirt at some point. Like, I have, you know what I mean? Like, so I've now put that value on it. Now I'm in my late 40s, so it did take some time. But, you know, it's again, it's the community around me that helped me shape it, that showed me there was value. in what I did.
Talk to me about that process a little bit, because it is, you were bringing it up and you were sort of talking about the way the community comes around you to support you, and it's not something that you know going into this. Like, I was lucky enough before I moved to doing the podcast and music sort of full time, I had somebody pull me aside and go, "Listen, stupid, you're gonna be okay." Right? Like, just go fucking do it. We're gonna be here. I'll just say it was Lucky over at Honor Roll. So Lucky is very specific, and so thank you to him. But like, I'm enough of an idiot that I have to have somebody go, "Look, stupid," right?
Yeah, and those people were there for you and were there for me. And I think, in my way of looking at it, anyways, this is not by any means gospel, but it was exactly that. It was not just the support of people who can help you with spaces like this, or with money for equipment, or with, I gave my time. I gave my genuine time, my genuine input, my genuine support, and I got it back. Right. So, although that's not what I went in to do, that's what happened, right? It's somewhat being genuine about it, and people will see that and they'll want to see more. And it does come down to, I can't play the guitar, but I want to. So I want to watch you play it, and I want to see you develop, and I want to see you write songs. I mean, I used to have, above the Capitol Theater, me and a bunch of other artists rented a sort of musical chairs of those rooms up there over the years. And, I would listen to, great musicians like George Mannery and Sean Barry and other guys like that play the same song over and over and over and over. But it would, well, I'm sitting there drawing, and it would be like a Family Guy joke, right? Like, where it's the same punchline for 10 minutes, and it was funny, then it just got annoying, but then it got funny again. Yeah. So I got that feeling out of it, right? And I enjoyed it, and I think, or at least I hope, that it meant as much to them after take number 14, me going, as it meant to me for them to walk over and be like, "Dude, that tree looks great."
Right.
So, I didn't get paid for that tree. They didn't get paid for all those versions of the song they did, but I know that's not the point, but at some point when it's offered to you, that's when you're not swallowing your pride. You're doing what you love, and it's probably not going to pay the bills for everyone, but might get you a new pair of shoes,
right?
Like, enjoy it, get back to work, shovel that, do this, and that's just it, right? Like, I'm not giving up in any way, shape, or form. My retirement plan, is to carve birds and make bird, like, I'm going to use my craft. I'm going to use my skills at some point in my life, to supplement what I've also built with my family and community and yada yada.
It's funny because, like, I wonder if it's the same for you with your son, but like, there was a part of me when I was looking at doing the podcast stuff and music and kind of stepping away from a truck and making art a career, there was a part of me that was like, more important than me doing this for me, which is obviously very important to me because I'm an egotistical asshole, but more important than that to me, there was this part of me that was going like, the only way I know how to teach my kids how to do anything is by just doing it, and they see it. Because if you just tell them, they don't fucking listen anyway. So if I want my kids to be something more than just like a go to fucking work every goddamn day and hate your life, then I guess I'm gonna have to find a way to not do that myself. Right?
Absolutely. And that comes back to, I think for me anyways, going to hockey and hating it and dreading it. And my father even tells a story about how I got up before him and smashed a bunch of nails into a piece of wood and jammed them under the car tires to make sure that we get 4 flats so I wouldn't have to go to hockey. But it was him showing me that it was fun, and that he was having a great time, and that it wasn't a miserable thing. I didn't want to get up early. I hated the cold. But again, donning the armor and doing all that. So for me, I have no clue what I'm doing. I'm either a helicopter parent, or I'm not there enough, or I'm, I overthink it constantly.
Yeah.
Like, here's your lunch. Do you need 2 snacks or 1? It's like the kid's 17.
Yeah.
I could be 6 feet under the ground at this very moment. That kid's gonna be fine.
Yep.
But I still, you know what I mean? So by example, you know what I mean? It's the fun part. I try to do that. You know, my other son, my youngest, you know what I mean? That's where I bought an old ghetto blaster, and I got a crowbar and a hammer, and I said, let's get the magnets out of this thing. And, you know, we had a great time smashing this thing with goggles on, and the kid hit himself with a crowbar at one point and didn't cry and held it in, and it was just magical, right? And, you know, this was no agenda.
Right.
This was me trying to figure out something to do. Like, you know, I get this time with my child and I want it to be spectacular, but I'm exhausted and I got nothing. Let's smash this radio, like, let's do it, man. And then it ended up being, you know, the littlest effort and the littlest thought, but again, just genuine, and it was a great time. So, yeah, I don't know what I mean.
But that's great. That's great. I mean, maybe as a closer, because I think where are we at time-wise, George?
We're at 43 minutes.
Beautiful. So maybe because like we've talked very sort of esoterically as opposed to very specifically, for people who might be watching this, and I don't know that they would have gotten this far and not already known some of this information, but tell people about the work that you do. What is the work that you do as an illustrator? How can they find you? All of that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Well, so for when I work on my art or my illustrations, aside from, like, you know, making a living, it's a sort of half and half situation. I constantly am working on comic book stories of personal, it would almost be like a diary in the sense of, like, I'm telling some of the great stories about my dad and his brothers. Okay. Who using kitty cats and other things. You know what I mean? I'm just I'm just enjoying the process and constantly trying to learn. And then there is what I do, which to get a hold of me is to, like, you know, Google my name, all my information is there. Most people get a hold of me through Facebook.
There'll be links in the description.
So last week I did 401 truck supply Christmas party. Okay. I did 120 portraits in 7 hours of people sitting down and me doing this, and they paid me a very generous sum per hour because I only do this if I get that pay. And I get a lot of these gigs for weddings. And I've also done this for charity events, where the people who are coming to donate their money and their time for this charity ball, and they're having dinner. A good friend of mine, Danny Palenka, an artist himself, would get me to work. He started this really by having me come over and do it at a charity, and then through that charity, people just got a hold of me and asked me to do it for their weddings. And I had someone ask me to do it for this New Year's. And when I told them my fee, and they said, no way am I paying that. And I've had other people say, that's it? So you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to do there. And then another side gig I do a lot of is draw people's Dungeons and Dragons characters.
Oh, that's
You're
awesome.
Online, they get a hold of me, they send me their character sheet, I do a sketch, I send them the digital copy of that, they tell me the changes, I do an ink drawing, I send them a digital copy, I mail it to them, I get a PayPal. These guys are from wherever in the world.
That's fantastic.
It's just in the little Dungeons and Dragons online community, and I'm not even a popular one. You know what I mean? There are other artists that do this. So in that, I put a lot of time and effort into it because I love doing it. Right. And I don't have enough time because I have a real job and this and that. But I do take the contracts every now and again, and they're wonderful. I could maybe one day parlay this into some sort of a job, but as it stands right now, just figuring out the bugs of this online world is so much fun in itself. To just found like that little thing started with, you know, buddy of mine's D&D group, and I went, can I draw your characters? Because I just loved it. I did it as a kid. I hadn't done it in years and had a great time. And doing the portraits, right, was a favor I did for a friend. Right. That has now become something that I can make some pretty decent money at. Right. So that's what I do. I Kramer style stumble backwards into jobs. Right. And I think a lot of that is because, you know, I now can treat it as a job. Yeah. I now can get the work done. I can get a little dispassionate and motor through drawing someone's house and all the bricks that I don't want to draw,
right,
and all the leaves on the tree that I don't want to finish. But now that's just part of the job. It's like mopping the floors.
That's great.
The fun design part's done. There it is. The excitement, the spark. Ugh, now I gotta finish it.
Right.
But again, it's I'm finding that rewarding now. I'm finding it exciting that not just my friends have things hanging in their house.
Right.
That strangers.
That's awesome, dude.
And
George, it's been a pleasure meeting you. Thank you for hanging out with us on the podcast. I don't know what we're doing in the new year, so just in case I've decided to be lazy and not add anything to the end of these, make sure you hit the subscribe button, click the like, share, all the other stupid shit that you have to do, because it's social media. It's 2019, and if you don't tell people about us, then how the fuck are they going to find out about it? Thank you for hanging out with us, George. Thank you for hanging out with us, whoever is watching this, and we'll see you next time.